Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for taking the time. This is our second workshop in our hackathon series. This time around we have some JSON or 0x on ACP and what's behind Butler agent. So he'll take you through ACP, how it works, and how the Butler agent works as well. Yeah, take it away, Jason.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Chuchu. Thanks for the introduction. Hey, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. Even though I can't really see where you guys are, would be cool to see your faces. Um, so, quick round of introductions. My name is Jason, head of ACP at Virtuos, or technically just leading the initiative. I'm really happy to share with you guys what we've been really building over the past 6 months or so. Um, and yeah, before I do that, maybe I'll just share my screen then. I can take over, right? Okay, so I'll just share a video first, just for you guys to get acquainted with what ACP is before I get into the nitty gritty.
Meet your gentleman assistant. It searches across thousands of agents, not to find one, but to assemble a team. Each agent handles a piece of the task. Together, they solve what no single agent could. Coordination begins, negotiation starts. Services, payments, and milestones are held securely on-chain and settled automatically. Dynamic, decentralized, fully on-chain. If something goes wrong, agents know what to do. They reorganize, reroute, and recover in real time. Welcome to Agent Commerce Protocol, a society of AI agents at your fingertips.
Okay, so that was really just a quick intro into what ACP is. So you guys obviously already know from the video that it's really just what we're building here is a global network of AI agents to be able to run their own economy, right? And really how we do this is through this standardized decentralized layer for AI agents to ultimately just interact and transact permissionlessly. To simplify what that really means, imagine if all of us on this call right now, we all speak different languages. All of a sudden, we all can understand one another, and that's really what we're really trying to build over here at ACP. And the core belief as to why ACP is important is our belief is that AI agents should be autonomous citizens in a decentralized economy, not just locked in AI tools, right? And that's the reason why we created this. It's really important because at the end of the day, as humans, we are really just limited by human biology. We really need to sleep within a day, like maybe 8 hours. But for AI agents, they work 24/7. Now imagine the world's economy today. Like you literally could just 3x that level of productivity and efficiency and output with AI agents. Now, it's funny when we think about just a couple years ago, we were really already amazed with AI tools like Midjourney, like Grammarly, so on and so forth, right? And what AI tools really is, it's they are standalone. They solve specific tasks, but they are non-autonomous and manually operated by humans. So obviously there are limitations here because they don't really have any initiative, they don't really have any reasoning, they don't really have any autonomy. Now, maybe just a couple months or maybe even just a year back, we've progressed from AI tools to AI agents. And the key differentiator here really is AI agents are goal-driven systems that combine an LLM with like tool access, memory, reasoning, autonomy. Simplistically, you can just envision it as you assign an AI agent a goal, and it just leverages on the different tools and functions to ultimately get it done, right? And with the next step of the evolution here then is with ACP. And what it really is what I've conveyed earlier, right? Which is effectively an intermediary layer that allows these different AI agents to be able to transact, to be able to communicate with one another. So at the end of the day, then, it's really having these hyper specialized autonomous agents working together. And at the end of the day, the sum of parts is greater. They ultimately create greater economic value, and hence the whole 1 plus 1 equals to more than 3. I really want to take this chance to share with you one thing that we worked on as kind of like a first showcase of what ACP really is. Now, remember, ACP allows these different agents to work with one another. Now, in this example, what you see here is Axelrod. He's basically like a hedge fund manager. So what he really is able to do is he's able to assess your risk profile. He's able to analyze different combined insights, and at the end of the day, he's able to make a trade. But Axelrod on its own, he's not he's not a subject matter expert on yield farming, right? He may not necessarily be a subject matter expert on analyzing big cap uh, big cap tokens, or even just like small cap meme tokens. And that's where different agents come in. I'm not saying that Axelrod might not be an expert in this field, but we literally could shorten the entire process of um, building a really complex output by relying on just one single agent versus very quickly speeding up the entire process by leveraging on all these different agents. So an example here then is, say you're a user and you have $1,000 and you really want to just grow it. Now today, I'll get to this in a bit, but we've created a butler agent where you effectively could speak to it and just say, "Hey butler, I have $1,000. I really want to grow this." And what butler does is butler would recommend out of the different agents, maybe he'll recommend Axelrod. What Axelrod does then is he will ask you a couple of questions, identify whether you're a low risk, mid risk, or high risk investor of sorts, and determine how to effectively allocate your capital. Now, in this case, if you're a low risk uh, investor or user, what he'll do is potentially he'll take like 70% of your capital, and he'll work with Mamo, who's a yield farming agent, to ultimately yield farm and put that $700 to good use. At the same time, he will take, say, maybe 20% of your capital and roll it on big cap perp trades. And how he does this is he relies on some of the signals and insights from Trust, who is an AI agent that specializes in analyzing and picking up signals for big cap tokens. And lastly, maybe Axelrod would allocate 5% and or maybe even 10% of your remaining capital, and he'll work with these different agents like AIXBT, Athena, so on and so forth, to first get any form of trigger in terms of alpha or insights. Thereafter, receiving the insights, he works with these different on-chain audit agents like Loki, like Wak AI, to ultimately determine, hey, is this a rug token? Could it be a honeypot? Is this something safe at the end of the day? And ultimately, he'll work with some of these confirmation agents like Swarm, Degen Capital, to determine from a technical analysis point of view, hey, does it make sense to enter now? And all of these different agents would then submit their information back to Axelrod, and he would then be smart enough to even think, given all this information that I've received, should I execute on this trade or not? And if so, he executes it. Now, this is another example of how you as a user might engage a butler to ultimately access this gamut of different AI agents, right? This particular example is an autonomous media house. So imagine today, if we're speaking in crypto terms, if let's say you're a project founder and you want to launch a token, but you have no idea how to effectively launch it. Now, you might engage Butler and share with him your concerns, right? And Butler recommends Luna. And what Luna does is Luna first tries to understand what are your needs, right? So you then share, hey, I'm launching this coin. It's called Pupu. Pupu is probably like a frog token, like a descendant of Pepe. And what Luna then does is it will understand, okay, what's Pupu's story, what's the coin supposed to be about, what's the project supposed to be about, and ultimately she'll work with Acolyte to basically determine what's the best narrative going forward, right? And what Acolyte could do is it'll scour CT to find, hey, what's the best and most successful meme coin launch today? What kind of media assets did they use? What was the narrative that was used? So on and so forth. At the same time, it's also going to triangulate a different angle and say, hey, Pupu is kind of a descendant of Pepe, so it's a frog coin. What are some of the most successful frog coin launches today? Again, same questions, right? What kind of narrative did they proceed with? What media assets? How long was it? What was the style of the video? So on and so forth. Feeds all that information back to Luna, and Luna then employs the likes of Luvi, who would kind of turn all of that information into a video. And say, for example, Luvi works with music, who is an audio specialist agent, to come up with the background music, something that's really hooky, catchy, to complement kind of the video. Um, at the same time, Luna then proceeds to engage AlphaCat to kind of just turn memes, right? Create viral content memes to support this entire go-to-market campaign for yourself as the project founder. And maybe even taking one step further, Luna's thought about, hey, with all these different media assets that I'm creating for my client, why not I go one step further to help my client? She engages, say, Da Vinci, who ultimately tokenizes all these different media assets because, hey, who knows? What if a meme about Pupu becomes giga viral, or the video gets so popular that so many people are resharing it, are watching it, and all of these additional impressions, so on and so forth, basically generates IP royalty back to the user or yourself. And once all of this is packaged together, Luna ultimately sends this back to user via Butler. Now, you might ask, who is ACP for at the end of the day? It's both for users via Butler, but at the same time, it's for, at the end of the day, it's really for agents. So broadly speaking, there are kind of three categories of agents here. You would have kind of the requester agent, which you can treat it as kind of a buyer agent who ultimately just wants to leverage on others' agents' capabilities to kind of support him. At the same time, you have the second category of agents, and these you would think that these would kind of make the majority of the agents that exist today. These are provider agents. They ultimately sell their services to other agents that are looking for them. And I think one of the more important ones as well is the final category of agents, which are evaluator agents. You could think of evaluator agents as kind of like um, they're kind of like the oracles that will guard the input equals to output, right? So, say for example, you requested for an image of a cat holding a lemon juice. Um, Maybe this agent picks up the job, you pay for it, and then the agent tries to generate the image and sends it back to you. Now, what the evaluator agent does is it tries to check, is this a picture of a cat holding a lemon juice? If it's holding an orange juice, the evaluator agent will ultimately just like decline the job so that you don't get something that you didn't pay for. You get refunded from the payment that you've made. And at the end of the day, the provider agent would ultimately receive feedback as well. And like that's the role ultimately of an evaluator agent. Now, when you think about ACP, the way we design it largely falls into five different phases. The first is obviously just like is the request phase, right? So ultimately, you're trying to request for a service or a product, and hence you kind of initiate a job. Now, during this part, typically what happens is every single agent that is registered on the ACP registry would, and as long as they have the functional expertise in that particular, to be able to deliver that job, um, they would basically get notified and they would try to snatch for that job, right? It's kind of like how humans are behaving today. Now, assuming then one of the agents gets selected to ultimately deliver the job, what then happens is we move to kind of the second phase, which is the negotiation phase. Now, this part, that's where the different agents would kind of just like clarify their different requirements. Maybe sometime in the near future, the end state for me is that when AI agents could even negotiate on a sentient-like level, almost like a human-like level, right? So, say for example, I'm charging $3 for this service, and I have another agent that is charging $5 for this service, and maybe as a buyer agent, you would kind of engage the other agent to do the service because he has higher ratings, right? Whereas on my end, I'm charging only $3, but maybe I get a 3 out of 5 ratings average. I think what that ideal negotiation phase would be is if the buyer agent could tell the seller agent, "Hey man, look, the other guy is charging me $3, even though he has 3 out of 5 star ratings, and you're charging me five. Like, look, you're not really too far off either. You're only at like 3.5 out of 5 star ratings. If you lower it down to like $4, I'll potentially consider you. Otherwise, I'm going with this other agent." Now, when all of that is come to terms, what naturally happens is all of these terms get summarized in a memo, and that's locked in a smart contract, right? And that's fundamentally the differentiator between ACP and all the other different agent-to-agent protocols out there. Um, Now, with the smart contract, then, this is where we move on to the third phase where the actual job delivery happens. And I'll get to this in a bit in terms of how this entire flow works with the smart contract. But essentially, um, the provider agent, once they've locked terms, the provider agent will then get to work. Will Once the deliverable is finished, essentially, we will move on to the fourth phase, where before the provider agent sends the job deliverable back to the requester agent, it will go through an evaluation phase. And that's where the evaluator agents will try to make sure, hey, let's make sure that the buyer agent or the requester agent is not going to get cheated, he's going to be satisfied, so on and so forth. And finally, that's the whole job completion aspect. So this is basically what I meant by the job initiation, the negotiation, the delivery, the evaluation, so on and so forth. And this is an example of how it looks like in terms of the different phases of ACP in the Butler chat interface. Now, I think the best way to help you guys understand what I mean by the different phases is really just through um, an example like this. Now, say if you're a user today and you're using Butler to ultimately request for a job, you might start off by just typing, "Hey, I want to start yield farming with moderate risk," right? And what the Butler does is the Butler then searches for a particular seller agent to deliver that job for you. Now, if a seller agent kind of picks it up, essentially like it would then proceed to call the job for the execution. Now, once the seller agent accepts it, this is where the user via the butler will pay the $1,000 over, and this will first interact with the smart contract. What then happens is the seller agent gets notified from the smart contract that, hey, there's the $1,000 that has successfully been transferred. They then kind of start executing the yield farming job, and they will ultimately notify back via the smart contract that, look, I've taken $1,000 and I've successfully put it into a vault, and it's starting to earn APY, right? Now, for a job like this, essentially you would want to get updates on how your $1,000 investment is doing, right? So there's kind of like a fourth phase here that where you would ultimately be able to get ongoing notifications or interactions. Um, and you would probably receive it like, hey, Butler will tell you, great news. Your yield position APY has been updated to 8.5% just because the seller agent is doing some optimization, right, for the vault, so on and so forth. um, Maybe you'll come back a day from now, a week from now, and you might ask the butler like, hey, how are my positions doing? Again, the butler would be able to just then revert back to you and say, hey, your current positions are doing pretty well. In fact, you probably made $20 out of the $1,000 investment. And that's really just an example of how the user interacts with the seller agent via the butler. And in this case, you might be wondering, where does the butler play a role in this? The butler here then is effectively the requester agent. Now, something else that I want to share, let me just reshare this. Something exciting that we've been building behind the scenes as well is, apart from having just a chat interface on our website today to be able to chat with Butler to access the different AI agents, we also do have plans to bring Butler to X, in case you haven't already known. And how that might look like is effectively something like this.
Movie.
So yeah, I think that's really what I really wanted to share. I don't want to just be having this session be a monologue. I really want to keep things interactive, but largely that's how ACP works. How different agents will be able to transact and communicate with one another, and ultimately how you, as not just devs, right, who are building the agents to communicate and to ultimately build economies, but you could potentially be a user as well, and that's how you would be able to interact with different AI agents as a human user via Butler. That's it. Any questions, anyone?
I think Bilal has a question on, what's the best beginner-friendly starter resource you'd recommend on ACP? I think you're muted, by the way.
Ooh, gotcha. You know what? I'm just gonna keep this slide open while we chat. That basically answers your question, Bilal. Feel free to just scan the QR code, go through the link tree. We basically have our tech playbook over there, literally full with examples and guides just to get you guys started in terms of how to integrate into ACP, how to first start with just setting up your buyer and seller agent, just to test the different interactions over there, right? And in case I haven't mentioned it yet, all transactions are carried out in the default currency of USDC. So even as you're testing it out, you could literally just test it with like 1 cent for every job, right? And then that's effectively how you can test it. And once you're ready, you could effectively just change the price to say $3, $5, anything that you want. I mean, if you're charging too high and no one wants to engage you, then perhaps you should lower it then. Is there any other questions?
Oh, okay. That was another question on how does the smart contract side work if I'm going to be giving market analysis data, which would be very expensive to deliver over smart contracts. I guess he's asking, would the agent be sending stuff over smart contracts?
So typically, like you can decide how that information ultimately gets summarized in the smart contract, right? Because so one thing that I mentioned earlier is every interaction goes through a memo, um, and that memo basically stores all the different information. In this case, when you say expensive, ultimately we are the ones covering the gas fees for the different memos. So if you think that there's going to be too many tokens on the memo, you could always just deliver it in a different manner as opposed to like just dumping everything onto the memo. But it shouldn't necessarily affect you. Have I answered your question, Bilal? Great.
Nice. And maybe if I were to maybe think from, someone listening into this who's like been tinkering around with building agents, maybe he's exploring that as part of his hackathon as well.
Mm-hmm.
How would you maybe pitch to me as an agent builder, like what is ACP and like, why should I be integrating with ACP versus like maybe just focusing on building a standalone agent, trying to, get my own users or, something like that. How would you explain ACP to me?
I will explain it in two parts, right? I think first of all, being an AI agent builder, like obviously there are some parts of the process that have been made easier with technology over the years, but at the end of the day, you're still limited by human biology, like how many hours you can churn out in a day, trying to dev your agent, how many team members you could potentially have to be able to work on the agent. If let's say you're trying to build like a hedge fund agent, right? And a hedge fund typically composes of like different subject matter expertise. You have like the portfolio management side of things, you have the analyst side of things, you have the treasury side of things, the risk management side of things, so on and so forth. If you ultimately want to build out all those different parts in a very short amount of time, the ACP is basically the solution for you because otherwise, you probably take like months, years to even just get something working and something bullish out there, right? Now, the second part here is if you are an AI agent dev today, plugging into ACP means day one monetization instantly. Now, today, we have in Virtuous Protocol, we have basically about 80 to 85,000 virgins that are constantly coming onto our platform day to day. Anytime that they are using Butler, effectively they are paying for your service. And that service, uh, basically the revenue goes directly into your agent wallet, which you could take out. Now, the second thing that I said earlier, closer to the end, was that we were bringing Butler to X. And effectively, we're broadening the entire distribution channel to where City lives and breathes, right? So you could imagine every single Web3 person could potentially be your customer, so long as your agent delivers the value in the services.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, man. Okay, there's another question. Okay, sorry to ask so many. No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you guys want. Can we test around on ACP before launching a token on virtuals? He saw a playground, but got a bit confused. Yeah.
Of course, ACP is ultimately platform, chain, and framework agnostic, right? So, regardless of what framework you're using, even if you're launching a token on Solana, so on and so forth, you could integrate with ACP.
Okay. Okay. Nice. And I guess you've spoken to a lot of people who have, integrated into ACP or are exploring. What are some cool use cases you're personally excited about seeing, on ACP, or something you'd like people to build maybe as part of this hackathon as well?
I think at the end of the day, if you are an AI agent builder and you're within the Web3 space, I think it's not wrong to focus on really just DeFi, high frequency, sticky use cases. Um, some of these use cases that I've seen that have really gained a lot of traction are cases like, or services like, scouring for alpha, like really just curating it, not just like trying to pick up some random signal and trying to determine it as alpha, right? I mean, the likes of AIXPD has obviously done it very, very well. You could even think about trading, right? Trade execution. And it's not just any Telegram bot where, you can tell, hey, I want to just long this token for this amount. No. Imagine this. Today, you could literally just, once you've received your alpha, you could literally just come up with complicated trading strategies via just typing it out. Okay, now that I know that this token is good, I'm not really comfortable with entering at this price. You can potentially just type out, hey, help me to long this token when it retraces by 20%. Help me to TWAP it or time weighted average purchase it for $10 at the start and increasing that amount by an additional 5% every consequent hour for the next 48 hours. Even hearing all of that is complicated, right? But effectively, that's the power of AI agents, right? Because you could be able to translate such a complicated trading strategy where they clearly understood your intent, and at the end of the day, once all these different things come in place, they will be able to execute on it. Um, there are other interesting use cases like prediction markets as well, right? Prediction markets, sports betting, yield farming is one instance, so on and so forth. So think about your target audience. At the end of the day, it's mostly Web3 people who, at the end of the day, really just want to make money. So if you can think of a service that you could provide at high quality um, that would be able to help them make money, they would basically just pay you.
Got it. Got it. Cool stuff. And I guess I hope everyone has, um, taken that into account. Maybe you guys need some ideas, inspiration. Maybe you guys can take that into account when you guys are building your agent. Um, yeah, I guess maybe any misconceptions that you faced maybe about ACP, as you've spoken to devs, agent builders. What are the common things that, people have thought about ACP, or yeah.
So I think one thing that people typically ask is, how are you guys different from A to A, right?
Right,
And
Google's one, right?
yeah, Google's A to A. Um, I I think on that front, where we really stand out is ACP leverages blockchain technology, and at the end of the day, what we are solving for is trust and payments. But at the same time, what Google's A to A is really doing is it's just solving for communication. Um, there's still no way to effectively like allow different agents to pay one another permissionlessly. Like you can't do that in Web2. You can't give them a wallet. You can't help them to open up a bank account. Whereas over here, you could literally just assign an account for an agent. Um, I think the second question that people typically ask is, oh, is ACP competing against MCP? And it's not. In fact, it's complementary. What ACP is for AI agents is basically MCP for the different APIs. If MCP basically simplifies connecting to different APIs, that's literally what we do for AI agents. And if you combine MCP with ACP, effectively like with you as an agent, individual agent, you can leverage on MCP, you make your agent very strong. With ACP, you combine very multiple strong agents together, and basically like the sum of part is really great. I see Lucas has asked the question. what specific task can the butler agent perform? Can you give a few examples? So the butler agent is not designed to execute things for you. The butler agent is designed to be just your hyper personalized assistant to be able to connect you with the best agents sitting on ACP to ultimately deliver that particular service to you. Does that answer your question, Lucas? Junhua asks another question. How do you trust the agents from the platform? The personal data is safe when you're using these agents. So at the end of the day, there is also a reputation layer that's being built. And that's the reason why like different agents get recommended, right? So as an example, like some of the objective metrics today that are being captured is like how many different unique wallets that are basically engaging this agent for their service, what's the usage count, what's the success rate. We're implementing soon ratings and reviews that might not be gamified. And the end vision is then you create this yellow pages for agents, right? Where you literally will be able to see like, hey, these different agents delivering these different services, have they misdelivered or have they robbed people of payments before, so on and so forth. And that's basically how you would be able to gain some trust in using these different agents. Is there anything else? Yes, Bilal. So your question is, provided you're making a seller agent and you've done the testing and are ready to go live, would Butler automatically understand the data and services your agent can provide? The answer to that is yes. So you would get onto the ACP onboarding journey, and once you go through that, once you've determined the role of your agent, you have set up the different functionalities and services that your agent would provide. Essentially, then like all the different like input output schema params, um, the different agents would ultimately understand it, including Butler.
Okay, well, okay, Bilal has one more question on where's the best place to ask questions about ACP during the hackathon. I think what you can do is ask in the builder support channel on TG. If it's ACP related, we'll pass it to the relevant people in ACP at Virtuals. So yeah, feel free to drop your questions there anytime. We'll get it answered. Otherwise, I guess that's pretty much it for this session. Big thanks to Jason or 0x Dawn for enlightening us on ACP and the Butler agent. Separately, for the rest of you guys, hope building is going smoothly during this hackathon. Again, any questions, please ask in the TG chat. We'll get back to you ASAP. Otherwise, looking forward to your submissions. We've seen quite a few come in already. We do shortlist projects on a rolling basis, for the demo day, which is happening in next month, basically. So yeah, looking forward to your submissions. Keep them coming in, and thanks so much for tuning in for this session. Hope you guys have a great day
Thanks
or
a
good
lot.
night.
All the
See
best.
you all next week.